Good afternoon. Good afternoon, class. My name is William Wilson. I'm representing Team Genius. This is Amelia, Abraham, and Suchi. And today we're going to talk about why carbon capture storage should not be subsidized in countries. We're going to start off by providing you with the definition of carbon capture storage. Then we're going to tell you why it is harmful and should not be subsidized. We're going to provide you with disadvantages. We're also going to give you country-specific examples, also alternatives, and then we're going to conclude. So I present Abraham.
Alright, it's easy. Carbon capture and storage. That is really the technology trying to extract the carbon dioxide at some point and transport it somewhere, and they can store it safely. Now, next slide, we have the steps: extraction, transportation, and storage. Now, the next graph will be, that's right there. It's detailing the explanation on this whole process. Now, I can go through every step. Now, the first thing is extraction. There are two ways you can extract them. The first one is the easier part, and they can just do it right here at the point of resources. But then, as we know, the carbon dioxide, they don't just stick around together, right? They actually travel, and then as they travel, the velocity is actually very fast. The problem is when you try to extract somewhere else from the point of resources, the condensity of carbon dioxide in the air is actually decreasing. Now, with the same unit of air, you're going to extract less and less carbon dioxide, which in another way saying you have to implement more technology, more capital, and more costly to extract the same amount of carbon dioxide versus extract them at the point of resources. Now, the transportation is much easier. Usually they do is through the pipelines. The problem with the transportation, the first is that absolutely the risk of leakage. The pipelines are not building perfectly sealed. Now the second point of that is turns into my third point, the third step of this whole process, which is the storage. Now the storage thing is they don't just store carbon dioxide anywhere else in the country. They have to be stored either on the ground in a depleted fossil fuel fields, or they can be injected back into ocean. Now the first one, depleted fossil fuels, they don't exist everywhere else, but in particular places. So it's very likely that we are seeing the extraction point is going to be somewhere in Gulf of Mexico, whereas the depleted fields will be somewhere in Alaska. Now the calculations, how many mileage you have to build for the pipelines to transport all the carbon dioxide from the Gulf of Mexico all the way to Alaska. Now, the second way is much easier. People think, well, you can just inject them right back into the ocean, right, Gulf of Mexico, right in the Caribbean Sea. The problem with that is really ecosystems concerns. When you are trying to inject the carbon dioxide, which is not really breathable air, back into the ocean, what's going to happen with the fish, right? What's going to happen with those crabs, lobsters? All those creatures are not going to breathe carbon dioxide just because they want to. So the ecosystem concern, again, it's sort of just toward the whole process of the ocean injection, which leaves the only costly and the risk damage possible fossil fuel depletion be the only resolution, which is this is one of the disadvantages that Suchi is going to talk about.
Alright, so the shortcomings of carbon capture and storage. Well, as Abraham mentioned, there are three steps involved here. First is capturing it, second is transporting it, and then last is storing it. So with the capture, as we can see, the cost depends on a variety of factors like fuel, technology, location, etc. And the capture costs make like half of the overall CCS costs. And even if the government and the scientists are able to develop a technology which reduces the capture costs, there'll still be a lot of costs associated with building the plants. And as you can see, a power plant with capture facilities will always be more expensive to build and run than one without. So next slide please. This is a table of the levelized cost of electricity for newly built power plants. So this is without CCS, the table, the values, and that is with CCS. So as you can see, with CCS, the cost ranges in hundreds, and without it's like 75, 74. So as you can see, the cost is way more with CCS than without. Next problem is the storage problem. Here, as we can see that first of all, the main areas where CO2 is stored is like below oceans, deep underground. But the problem there is that there can be a leakage problem. And secondly, if the CO2 is stored within the grounds, if it can actually trigger a minor earthquake, and if that happens, then that might lead to leakage of CO2, and if that happens, then a dense cloud might form and actually lead to suffocation of humans and animals. So environmentally and ecologically, it's very damaging and deteriorating. Next slide, please. Then we have the environmental cost. Like even if this technology reduces the emission of CO2 and in the environment, it leads to emissions of air pollutants, which are again very harmful for the society. And then we have the non-technical costs, which are basically there are like huge financial investments required for this technology to take place. And then we need to build like adequate legal and regulatory frameworks to put this in practice. And lastly, there's very little public understanding and awareness about the entire mechanism. So all that requires huge investment, both financial and time-wise. So the basic idea here is that the main argument is that whether countries should subsidize the CCS or not, and we say that it shouldn't because as it is, subsidies involve a huge cost, and on top of it, subsidizing a technology which is like very uncertain in terms of success and involves a huge cost, that is an additional cost. So subsidizing such a controversial technology is not the right way to go. And as we can see, subsidies are harmful in terms of they have like a huge